Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast and Unsustainable Wednesdays. We've got a lot of players to talk about today. It's been quite a bit since we've done Unsustainable. I think 2 weeks now since we did it last.
Maybe 3?
Maybe 3.
Might have been 3.
Maybe.
I don't remember.
Well, if it's 3, even more so, we've got a lot of players to talk about. Now, some of your favorites, such as Johnny Gaudreau, who we talk about a lot. I don't know if you have. Do you have Johnny Gaudreau on this list? Okay, so there you go. So a lot of these guys you'll see featured soon on like Bust Watch or Hot Hands. Some of the guys we've talked about a lot. I think Johnny Gaudreau is going to be a Bust Watch here soon. So just keep an eye out for those because that's going to be on the outside of this episode. So I'm going to start off this episode with my first Unsustainably High call in Jake Virtanen, right wing, 7% owned. He's been doing really well. Has more even strength goals than the likes of Tyler Seguin, Phil Kessel, Taylor Hall. Some big names out there. Jake Virtanen has scored more for them. And he's getting a lot of hype, and because of that, a lot of people are picking him up. But let me tell you that he's only on a 47-point pace on the season, so he's not exactly an incredible player by any means, and he's not going to get you a lot of points, doesn't shoot a ton. His shot pace is actually down a little bit from last year. And on top of that, over these last 30 days, which everyone is kind of freaking him out about, right? He's shooting at 15%, so a little bit high for him.
You can't disparage Shotgun Jake, though.
I mean, I can't, but I just did.
Yeah, the big thing about him is his lack of ice time. I brought him up during the Western Conference preview, although that was the one that got messed up, right? So I don't know if that actually made it in. But
maybe it didn't make it in.
My take on Virtanen is he's one of these guys like Rust, like Duclair, like some of the other guys we're seeing break out, Bjorkstrand, volume shooter that never gets the ice time. And I'm just hoping to see him get ice time. But he's not getting ice time. He's still getting shots in somehow, but I really don't see it being a long-term thing. It just can't be, given his current deployment.
I mean, and like I said, right, at his current pace, it's only 47 points. And so that guy's just not someone you want to pick up.
Right. My first one is Zach Hyman, believe it or not. Who's surprised? Center left wing, 27%. He's shooting a lot, which is interesting. I'm not ready to attribute that to coaching style or like a change in coaching yet. But I mean, maybe, I guess. But as of now, I'm going to assume that we're going to regress to what we're used to from Hyman, which is like pretty mediocre shooting, 150 pace or so. But the big things to point out here are his 18% on-ice shooting over his last 7 games and his 18% shooting on the season. Both of those are way inflated, even if his shooting stays as high as it's been. I still see Hyman as like a 50-point guy, as I mentioned, I think. I think I may have given him 50 to 55 range, something like that. But I still don't see him as an integral part of the offense or anything. He's always seemed to be kind of a role player on that I don't know what you call the top line anymore, on the top 6, I guess, of the Maple Leafs, and I don't see that changing personally.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think he's a good streamer.
Yeah, I like him as a streamer.
Right? That 50-55.
But I feel like Hyman's one of those forwards that feels like Ekblad, where he winds up getting over-owned for some reason. But yeah.
My next player here is going to be Ian Cole, defenseman, 17% owned on the Colorado Avalanche. Only 18.5 minutes, which is really low for a defenseman, so he's not getting a lot of time on ice, but he's making it count. But he is shooting at 14% over the last 30 days, which is preposterous for a defenseman. That's just not going to continue, unless, of course, your name is Tony DeAngelo, and somehow you defy all odds and just continue to produce with nothing. Also, Ian Cole has a 14% on-ice shooting, so he's benefiting a lot from luck right now. But the biggest takeaway from Ian Cole is the fact that his minutes are so low. And yesterday, he was the most dropped and added player, or not the most dropped and added, but he was equally dropped and added. So people are getting the hint, but also some people are late to the train here and picking him up now that he's kind of starting to slow down just a little bit. But just know that he's benefited way too much from luck with very little minutes.
Yeah, speaking of another guy that's benefited from some luck and low minutes recently, Alex Galchenyuk is showing up on my list here. Left wing, right wing, 13%. I'm kind of annoyed because he was propped up as a waiver target for this week. And I get the off nights, so in a deep enough league maybe, but we're talking about a guy that's getting like 13 minutes a game now. Power play 2 with Hornquist returning. There's nothing interesting about him. And I put him on this list before this last game where, the Penguins beat Ottawa 5-2 and Galchenyuk had nothing to do with it. No shots on goal, which is kind of what I expect going forward. Yeah, it's going to be bad. You don't want to be streaming Galchenyuk.
I think anytime you try to bet on Galchenyuk, you're going to come out losing somehow.
Sure seems that way. Every team that's traded for him, it's turned out that way.
Yeah, it sure feels that way with Alex Galchenyuk. My next guy here is someone I'm actually very high on long-term and actually like, as I've actually put on long-term targets on Monday's episode. But there are some warning signs just with this last stretch, right? And I want to make sure that expectations are correct. And that's Jaden Schwartz of the St. Louis Blues, who's been ridiculous. Left wing, 53% owned. Over the last 30 days, he's shooting at 23%, which is not fantastic. Granted, he does have 12% shooting on the season. So on the season, he is fine. It's just these last 30 days that are absolutely insane. And if you look at just these last 3 games played, it gets even crazier because he's been just ridiculous. And so just adjust your expectations down a little bit. I'd say he's like a 60 to 65 guy kind of rest of season, somewhere around there, or that's where he ends at the season. He's at a 65 pace if he played all games. And that's kind of where he is. I wouldn't expect the production that he's putting up right now to continue, which is really funny because last year he finished the season at, I think, like 3% shooting, 2% shooting. And now this year he has this ridiculous shooting percentage.
Yeah, I really like Jaden Schwartz rest of the season, but I agree. What he's been doing recently is ridiculous. Speaking of another player that's been ridiculous recently, that's Clayton Keller. I actually didn't put his ownership percentage on here, but I think it's something like 55 or 60 at this point. My first thought about Keller, I'll make this short, but was, okay, he got picked up a lot, and he's been playing really well lately, but it doesn't really add up. Like we saw basically his role be decreased, and suddenly he's playing better. I mean, the obvious kind of response to that is he's getting easier opponents. But digging deeper, Clayton Keller's IPP on the season. IPP is individual points percentage. It is basically if a goal goes in on the ice, if you are part of that goal, then it increases your percentage. If you are not part of that goal, it decreases your percentage. You'd expect an elite player to be about 75%. A good player is about 70%. I would call Keller something a little bit less than good so far. So I would expect him to be just below 70%. He's 88% on the season.
What?
He's 100% over the last month. 100% for a month.
A month?
A month. 14 games, and he's point per game. He's been either a goal or assist on every single goal that's gone in with him on the ice. I honestly don't know if there's another player that's like that has at least 10 goals or 10 points in that time span. It's insane.
I don't think there is.
I mean, it'd be too hard to check right now, but decreasing power play time on ice and deployment. His shots are up on the season, but they are also decreasing a bit lately. He had that big 12-shot game, which kind of popped up his numbers a bit, but he's starting to regress back to what we're expecting from him, which is sub 3 shots a game territory, maybe something like the 200 to 210 range. All that basically points to me that he's going to end probably a little bit south of his current point pace, which is a 58, I think. So I think 55, I guess 55 to 60 is a good range for him, but I'm not expecting this point per game goofiness that's been going on to keep up, especially considering he's somehow magic and is the new Nick Schmaltz.
Well, he plays on a line with Nick Schmaltz, so that big Nick Schmaltz energy actually transferred to Clayton Keller.
I don't understand. The Coyotes make no sense.
They don't.
They've never made any sense.
I just love how flustered Clayton Keller gets you.
I mean,
he
never really got me. Last year, he got me flustered because I expected too much of him. Now he's getting me flustered because he's doing too much.
Is Clayton Keller the Aaron Ekblad of forwards?
No. I think we already passed him with Zach Hyman.
Oh, man. I think Hyman... Okay, Hyman's one of them. Hyman's definitely an Ekblad of forwards. Moving on to unsustainably low players that should be doing better. My first one here is going to be Victor Olofsson. Now, he's actually been fine, and some of you may be saying, why are you even talking about Victor Olofsson here? Others of you are saying, oh, thank goodness he finally talked about Victor Olofsson. Well, over the last 3 games, his honest shooting percentage is 0. His own shooting percentage is 0. He's been involved in nothing because no goals have gone in on the ice while he's been on the ice, which is insane. So he has 0 points in 3 games played, but the good news is his minutes are still ridiculously high. And so as long as his minutes are staying high, I feel good. His shots went down, which is one thing to pay attention to and something to watch for. But if you look at all of Buffalo, they just played really bad this past week. And so none of them really did well. So I'm not like, I don't think you should single out Olofsson here and say, oh, Olofsson's the one that necessarily played bad. He played fine. It's just the team around him played terribly. He'll be fine. If anything, this little bit of kind of come back down to earth is going to help him out, I think, because he's on the season slightly unsustainable, but he's getting closer and closer to just saying, yeah, this is who he is.
Yeah. Okay, my first one, I feel like it's shown up in here a few times. Morgan Rielly.
Defense, I don't think he has. Has he
maybe
so
he
far
hasn't.
this season? I don't think he's shown up.
Not even been. He honestly hasn't been that bad, all things considered. He's been okay, but obviously not what people are expecting from Morgan Rielly. I think the big thing that the reason I put Morgan Rielly on here, and probably what people are expecting me to say, considering the rhetoric that I've kind of put out there recently, is that Morgan Rielly, after being sort of assigned to power play 2, has more power play points than Tyson Barrie.
Wait, in that time frame or
in that
all
time
season?
frame?
Wow.
In that time frame, Barrie has 1 power play point in the last month. 1.
That's good.
Morgan Rielly has 2. I mean, it doesn't seem like, I haven't watched enough Leafs games to say that maybe Barry's just making enough of an impact that despite not being part of the goals, he's still part of the play, like Oscar Klefbom style. I don't know, but if you ask me, that's a telling sign that Morgan Rielly should be put back on top power play as he meshes with those guys more. We saw him take off last season. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But beyond that, he's also on a deflated IPP. We've already talked about what that means. 39% on the season. For a good defenseman, you're looking at 50%. That's roughly where he was last season. He's also under 3% shooting this season. And he's still taking good shots. So there's a lot of things to like despite his lack of power play time. And if he gets that power play time back, I think we're going to see another big season out of him. Not 70 points. I never thought 70 points was coming again. But I still think he should be in the mid-50s. And I think that Barrie shouldn't be. If all things are equal and kind of this role gets reversed. But as long as Barrie's top power play, it's going to be hard to kind of shake his value.
My next guy here from the Chicago Blackhawks, Alex DeBrincat, left wing, right wing, 91% owned. He has a really, really low on-ice shooting percentage on the season and over the last 30 days. Over the last 30 days, it's 8.6%. That's insanely low and just not something I expect from Alex DeBrincat. Granted, last year's was around 10%. But I'd want it to be higher than that, especially given that he's on the top power play. His IPP is also really low at 57%, whereas last year he was a 66% IPP guy. And his shooting percentage also feels a little bit low at 10%. Minutes are still really high, so I wouldn't worry about that. It's really, I think, a big question just of deployment, right? And it's been all over the place. Last night he played 24 minutes. The night before that it's 19, and then sometimes it's 17. There hasn't been as much consistency in that area of his play, and that's what I think would help him out a ton, is a little bit more consistency in line mates and with actual minutes deployment. But I'd say I wouldn't worry about the new Alex DeBrincat. I would say that the Alex DeBrincat we all expected at the beginning of the season is long gone, and if you listen to the holiday special, we kind of gave you this new picture of a new Alex DeBrincat that's probably like a 60-point guy, right, with really good peripherals. And if that's who you still think he is, then he's fine. And I think he can get up to those 60, 65 points for the end of season.
Yeah, I agree. My next one is Logan Couture. Center 90%. He's not been great over this last little bit here, but nothing really is. I mean, he doesn't shoot a lot, but he never has been like a volume shooter or anything. But the fact of the matter is nothing stands out as an indicator that he should be playing poorly the rest of the season. His IPP and on-ice shooting are both on the season good, and his season point pace is about 70, and they're just awful lately. And that's the biggest thing that I would point to with Logan Couture. I think that he is going to continue on that 70-point pace, hopefully a little bit more consistently instead of this up and down business. And I think that's what I expected from Couture to begin with. So seeing him land back there would feel good. Would feel right.
It's funny because Logan Couture was so unsustainable at one point, and now he's completely flipped the script.
Yep. Now he's where we kind of expected him to be, I feel like.
He's kind of like, we've been saying all season, are the Sharks back? And then they're not back. And then they are back for like 3 games, 5 games, and then they're not back. That's kind of how Logan Couture, he's going on those same waves of they're back, they're not back. Who knows what's going to happen to them the rest of the season. I think I kind of know, though, what's going to happen the rest of the season. I think they suck. But,
Yeah, they might.
Yeah.
Martin
Next
Jones.
one is a defenseman, Thomas Chabot. 87% owned, 50-point pace over the last 30 days. His shot pace is down, but his on-ice shooting percentage is fine. His shooting percentage is solid. That's who he is and who he was going to be, in my opinion, was a 50 to 55-point guy. And as these minutes go up, I think he could have an opportunity for more minutes, just more goals he can potentially get in on. But that's kind of what I expect, like a 50. That's what I expected, at least a 50 to 55-point guy. You're going to be able to get him in like the 8th, 9th, 10th round. He's going to come back at value for you. That's kind of how I saw it. And in my opinion, if that's what you went in with, he's fine. And he's actually unsustainably low in that I think he can do better than he is right now, given how many minutes he's playing. So he's like in this weird spot where he's both sustainably high, but also unsustainably low. And I would expect him to be a little bit more consistent, if anything.
Yep. And my last one is Phil Kessel.
No!
Yeah.
You're so wrong.
Right wing, 75%. Shooting a little bit more. Again, he's also not a volume shooter, but the biggest thing that's bothering me is his on-ice shooting percentage being below 7% on the season. I get that he's not going to be a 70-point guy or above or any of that good stuff, but right now he's sitting at like a 40-something point pace. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I really don't. I also don't think it's going to be great. I basically see Kessel as like a 60-point guy. I do wonder what I said on the special, because I gave all these numbers recently, but I'm assuming I'm in the same ballpark as I said then. He still feels like he's good. He's a good player. So the fact that this is happening, this on-ice shooting percentage is that low, is a little weird. Again, I mean, I'm not expecting point per game. I'm not expecting 70-point pace. It's Arizona, so with their system, there's only so much you can do. But Kessel's just getting unlucky on top of a defensive system. So especially considering now that he's playing with a better other winger, you'd expect them to be able to help each other out a little bit.
I still just, I don't know. I think I said this also on the holiday special, but I just don't see that on-ice shooting percentage going up, honestly. That's kind of my take, is I don't see the on-ice shooting percentage increasing that much to make a difference for him to get out of this droppable range, right? Like for him to not be droppable, he's got to get to at least a 55, 60-point pace.
Well, droppable is a relative term.
Sure.
So whether he's droppable, even if he's getting 60 points, he's still droppable in a lot of leagues.
Yeah. I think more my point is, like, right now, a streamer is absolutely worth Phil Kessel, and I see that being the case kind of for the foreseeable future to an extent, as opposed to, I don't know. I see him as sustainably low. I still hold that.
I don't think he's going to end the season with 45 points. There's no way.
I think he ends the season with 50.
I think he gets above that. I'll take the over.
Okay. I mean, I think that's kind of his pivot point, right? Like we were saying, I think I said my pivot point was around 50. Maybe I even was generous and gave 55 if I'm not remembering correctly right now, but I'm low on him. I have no more for unsustainably low. Do you have any more?
I don't. Unsustainably low is the hardest one.
It is.
Honestly.
It is the hardest one to come up with, just because, especially this season, I feel like this season it's a lot of...
It's always been hard for me.
Yeah, it's always been
tough. It's the hardest one to research, because people don't... A lot of times when we're looking these up, we're either reaching out on Twitter or we're using trends. We're looking at who's being dropped. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people don't drop sustainably or unsustainably low people at the same time. So when you see guys that are going up in value, they're getting picked up often and quickly, and you can see that in the trends pretty fast. But for the other direction, it's a lot harder to look things up and come up with compelling players to put in these categories.
Yeah. On top of that, a lot of times unsustainably low, as you'll notice, is probably one of the highest owned sections of the entire show, right? Like normally unsustainably low ends up being the one place where Brent Burns can actually show up, or the Crystal Tangs, or all these highly owned guys that we normally don't talk about normally feature on unsustainably low. And that's because those are the people everyone wants to hear about, and they're the ones you should expect to do better, and it leads to trades, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, I'm going to move into Sustainably High, and you're going to like this first one. Actually, you might not, but I think you will. Nikita Gusev. Left wing, right
I almost
wing,
put him on mine,
11%.
but I was worried about his ice time.
Yeah, his ice time is the one thing that's a little bit suspect. But over the last, 30 days, he's been really sustainable. The last 7 days have not been sustainable. So in the last few games, he hasn't. But over the last 30 days, he's been fantastic. And I'd actually expect better deployment going forward, I think, and better opportunities, if anything. Because it seems right now what it is it's 14 to 15 minutes of very offensive minutes. That's what it seems like they're telling Gusev is go in these 14, 15 minutes and just take the ice by storm and score a ton of points. That's pretty much it. Like, it's a very, very specific role that he's playing, it seems. And I think if the opportunities get better and the deployment gets better and he gets more minutes at some point here, I could absolutely see a 65-point player rest of season.
Yeah. Very much could be. Yeah. He's on my radar for sure.
Yeah.
My first one, and I know you're going to like this one, is Brian Rust.
Yes, people want us to talk about him again.
68%. Now, I'm going to start out by saying that not everything's sustainable here, which is, obvious if you're looking at any of his numbers or any of his recent play. He's not going to stay at 16% on ice shooting. He's not going to stay at 20% shooting on his own. But when you talk about a Brian Rust from forget Brian Rust from last season. Brian Rust, comparing him to last season is like not even a thing you can do anymore. His situation has changed so dramatically. You were talking about like a 14, 15-minute guy last season who plays either on the top right wing sometimes or like bottom six and never got power play time, to basically a right wing one lock, at least until Crosby changes what the top line actually is in Pittsburgh, getting 20-plus minutes a game and being power play one. He went from getting very little opportunities to all the opportunities, and he's run with it. So the thing again, if you listen to the special, we talked about Brian Rust a bit. The shooting is the biggest thing. I feel like that's the first thing you look at is, wow, he shoots a lot. And that's always nice because even if they're not getting you points, they're getting you shots, and shots win weeks. Shots win categories, unless you're in a points-only league, in which case you're still happy with Brian Rust. So basically, the only possible thing, in my opinion, that could hurt Brian Rust is if he gets bumped from power play one, when Crosby comes back. And it's not Crosby necessarily that's bumping him, it's Hornquist. It's going to be between Hornquist and Rust, who stays up there, and they're not the same type of player. So there is an opportunity, unfortunately, for Rust to get bumped out because Hornquist is a big, hard-to-move guy, and that's not exactly Rust's style. So we'll see. The other option possibly be if he sees a decrease in ice time with the return of Crosby, which is possible. I'm a little bit less worried about that because even with a decrease in ice time, I think he's still going to have good minutes. Maybe if he's not getting 20 plus, he'll still be getting 18 to 20, which is fantastic for him. So I really like him rest of the season. I think he's going to be one of the guys. I think he's basically the Timo Meier, maybe even better, of last season, but this season, where he's breaking out very visibly and going to become a high draft pick next season.
I'm the point of next season is really interesting with a guy like Brian Rust, because he's a guy could absolutely, kind of like someone like DeBrincat, where very high expectations, but you change his deployment even a little bit and you get huge changes to his projection.
Yeah.
My next guy
change it though. If anything, like, I'm curious. I'm going to look up. I don't know what Hornquist's contract is like, but I'm pretty sure it's up like very soon.
So they need a new guy
wrong.
there.
I am not right at all.
You are wrong. You are entirely wrong.
They have him forever. They have him until 2023. So never mind. Ooh. Carry on.
Okay. So R.I.P. Brian Rust.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something. Maybe
he's never going to take over. I think Patrick Hornquist at this point is a bottom 6 forward that plays top power play sometimes.
Yeah. Agreed. My next guy here from the New York Rangers, 50% owned, Ryan Strome, center right wing. Shooting percentage is actually down from last year, even though it's all a little bit high at the moment. It's down, so he's gotten a little bit more sustainable than last year. Minutes are still sitting in the 20s, and he's just killing it. The one thing with him that is a question mark is his on-ice shooting percentage. The Rangers are one of the highest shooting percentage teams in the league, or highest shooting percentage teams in the league. And of course, a guy like Ryan Strome absolutely benefits from that, from a very high on-ice shooting percentage. And with those high minutes, he's going to be involved in a lot of goals. In the last 7 days, he's seen more power play time on ice. It's up to around 48-ish%, where it had fallen down when he had lost top power play. So he might be getting a few looks up there on the top power play now. Again, you never know what's going on with the Rangers deployment. So maybe he's getting better deployment now. So I would hold, absolutely hold, but there are places where this can kind of come crumbling down if the on-ice shooting percentage actually comes down to what it should be. If the Rangers spend more time in their own zone, which honestly the Rangers suck, right? So there's a lot of things that can change here for him.
Yep, they're bad. They're a bad team.
They're a bad team. But for now, this is all very, very fine for him, especially if those minutes stay up in the 20s.
I still hate Ryan Strome. I'll never like him.
That's because he left the Isles and was never good on the Isles.
He got traded, and Eberle came back, which is great. I'm happy with that still. But
until you signed a contract with him.
I mean, whatever. What's Eberle going to charge at this point? But okay, my next one is... This must be one of the most frequently requested players that never really winds up on Sustainably High because he's been so consistently good, but not... He hasn't like really broken out from like a he hasn't had a huge week, right? He's just had like a consistently good season, and that's David Perron. Left wing, right wing, 86%. I think we got called out for never having him on Sustainably High, but we did way back in like week 5 or week 6. So we were on Perron.
I remember I put David Perron Sustainably High that week, and because I looked at it and I was like, this is insane, and everything makes sense right now.
Yeah. And he's basically just been Sustainably High the whole time, but hasn't done anything eye-popping since. He's been on the same kind of thing ever since back then. But just recently, he blew up even more. He's actually had a big week. The increased ice time, shots, and power play deployment are what's to blame, I guess, if you want to call it that, for this kind of increase in value. Tarasenko, unfortunately, his absence is, I feel like, is the drive behind Perron here. He had to step up because their kind of main powerhouse is gone. So that means more shots from the peripheral guys here. I don't mean peripheral like he gets a bunch of hits, but just like the supporting cast, so to speak. So they need to rely on guys like Perron more, and he's been great. I really think he should flirt with that point per game pace rest of the season. I don't know if he necessarily gets it, but I think mid 70s or above even is pretty I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I'm expecting it at this point. I don't see him dropping below 70 points. That would be a collapse to me, which is insane. We're talking about Perron here.
I agree. I mean, he's been unbelievable, and he's been good for a minute now. Even towards the tail end of last year.
Consistently good, like the whole season.
Yeah. I mean, he's, like I said, since week 5, I've been loving David Perron. And since then, I never sang his praises, like you said, just because he was exactly what we kind of said on that episode I thought he'd be. You know, he's kind of nailing it exactly how I thought at the time. And I'd say that's one of my lucky ones, I think, that caught so early. I don't think we really it's hard to catch players that early that they're going to be good. It's really, really tough. Now, my last one on Sustainably High is someone, I guess, the goaltender. Aside from Korpisalo, this is, I think, the goaltender of David Perron, like the David Perron goaltender. And that's Robin Lehner. Goaltender, 62% owned. I'm surprised by the number of leagues I'm in that he's still available. He's stealing starts. He's been playing a ton of games. He finally won in the shootout. Congratulations, Robin Lehner. I hope you found something out there that works for you. But he's been playing super, super well. In a saves league, we don't like using must own, but damn, go check out his saves. His save percentage is phenomenal given the team he's on. On top of that, I think I think they do something similar to Washington, where they play a little bit more risky on the offense because they know they have a good goaltender on the back end that can stop things. So he faces way more shots, but he's just really, really good. So I would say you're not going to get wins, but like I said on the special, save percentage, goals against average, and saves are all fantastic with him.
Yep. Man, Lehner.
I would trade for him, man.
Do it.
I would if I really, really needed a goaltender. Lehner would be one of my top options to trade for, I think.
Well, My last one here is Kevin Hayes, actually. Center,
Wow.
18%. He's not going to be as good as he's been recently. He's on a shooting percentage being high as it is. But if you look at his shot production lately and his ice time, it's great. It's actually very good. This is not at 18%. This is not a player I expect to jump up into the 50s like he was earlier in the season. I feel like he jumped up, fell back off, and now he's kind of increasing again. I'm viewing Hayes as a great streamer option at this point. If he's not going to be able to get you the power play points because he's not getting that kind of deployment really. Although I don't know what's going on with the Philly power play lately, but as far as who is out when, but Hayes has been good lately. He's been very good for a while now, and I think that there's a pretty good chance that continues, even if it doesn't necessarily translate on the scoreboard all that much. A good Flyers week is going to have me looking at Hayes as a streaming potential option.
Oh, this one's fun. This one's fun. I've got a fun one for the first Sustainably Low here. Jakub Vrana, left wing, 66% owned. Yeah, he has slowed down quite a bit after that insane week or two. Minutes are down into the 13s. Not good enough. His shot pace is finally starting to come back down to earth. Remember before, his shot pace with the time on ice that he was getting was insane, and that's starting to come down. His power play percentage is just completely evaporated. I can't believe he's still 66% owned.
Yeah, man, does he feel like all these other players that, volume shooter that doesn't get the ice time? Why does this keep happening?
I don't know.
And he's not just a volume shooter; he's a pretty good volume shooter. He could. Yeah. I don't understand why he's not getting more time on ice and why he's not power play one. Well, I don't know. That could has a lot to do with handedness and whatever else, and the fact that you can't really shove any of Ovi, Kuznetsov, or Backstrom off that top power play. So it's a matter of Oshie or Vrana. My first one, and I really hope that a lot of you were able to sell this guy high when we recommended you do this, because we got a lot of blowback. I don't know why, but we got a lot of blowback about Jonas Donskoy and whether you should sell high, and the answer was clearly, and I think a lot of people didn't, and
now you're stuck with him.
Now you're not even stuck with him. The waiver wire is stuck with him. The free agency is stuck with him. He's just left wing, right wing, 28%. He's getting like 12, 13 minutes a game. He's off power play one. He's off anything relevant. He's cooked. He's cooked, which is not surprising, honestly. Why would that not happen? The only reason he wasn't cooked previously is because there was an available spot for him, and that spot is gone, and now he's cooked.
You know what he's like? He's like a hard-boiled egg. You can put it in, and there's varying levels of goodness. There's a certain point to when it gets ungood, and he's been left into the boiling water too long. Does that make any sense?
No.
I thought it kind of made sense. I don't know.
I don't even know what I could compare what you just said or Donskoy's situation to, other than he needs an injury to be relevant.
That doesn't have to do with food. That has nothing to do with boiled eggs, though.
Why has it got to be a food analogy or an egg analogy?
I don't know.
Or boiling analogy.
Honestly, I want a soft boiled egg right now, and so I was thinking about that, and
you just talked about how hard boiled eggs are bad. I don't even know.
I don't know.
Point you were making.
I don't know. This is kind of like at this point, he's also like the. Never mind. You know what? I'm not going.
You just called.
I'm going
Jonas
to the
Donskoy a hard-boiled egg, and then also said hard-boiled eggs are bad. Which
no,
is objectively false.
No, I said I wanted a. What? I thought I said I wanted a soft-boiled egg. That doesn't mean that hard-boiled eggs are
but
bad.
Then you were talking about how if you leave an egg in the water too long,
it
becomes bad.
There is a point at which a hard-boiled egg is left in the water too long.
What, when it explodes?
I don't know. Like,
I don't think I've ever done that.
Anything past 20 minutes is too long. Like, it's that you forget about the hard-boiled egg in the water.
Yep.
That's Dave. That's
boiling an egg like the most basic thing that people talk. It's like the thing to make fun of somebody for not being able to do is boiling an egg. You can't. Donskoy is a hard-boiled egg, ladies and gentlemen.
He is a hard-boiled egg.
He's a great addition to any Caesar salad.
Or ramen, I suppose.
Or ramen. No, not ramen. You need soft-boiled for that. And as we just discussed, Donskoy is not a soft-boiled egg.
He's a very, very hard-boiled egg. Oh, okay.
12 minutes in the water.
Lovely. Just like the hard-boiled egg. Okay, Ryan Getzlaf of the Anaheim Ducks. Center 53% owned. Shots are gone for some reason, and honestly, I couldn't tell you why. But that immediately makes him a lot less valuable, especially in points leagues, because you have to shoot to score goals. His IPP is also taking a big dip, but it's on-ice shooting percentage that is absolutely tanking him. It's at 7%, and that's it. The crazy thing is about that 7% is for the Ducks right now. I don't see 7% on-ice shooting as all that crazy. It's kind of like Phil Kessel in Arizona, right? He has a 7.6 on-ice shooting percentage. Like, that's not great, but it's Arizona. It's not that bad. And that's kind of where Getzlaf is at. So I don't know how high this can come up, because on the season, he's just at around 8.5. So how much better can it get? Not that much. He's good for peripherals and in cats leagues, but in points leagues, he's pretty much droppable entirely at this point.
Yeah. Another player that's droppable and has been forever and is still 72% owned is Joe Pavelski. Do I need to say we've been here so many times.
I mean,
center right wing.
This is the last call.
He's 72% owned still. If he's that high owned, he must be tradable, right? Just trade him. I don't know. Trade him for whatever. Trade him for nothing. Make somebody else. Trade him to somebody just so that they have to make this decision about dropping him. Trade him for nothing, literally. It'll just torture somebody else.
Trade him for nothing and then like go into the chat and just laugh at him.
Yeah. Because
that's worth more.
He's still 70+% owned. I can't really drop him, can I? And then you can just be like, ha, 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 ha. It was all a trap. That's why I traded him to you for like Linus Ullmark or something. Anyway, ice time is dipping now, getting 14 to 15 minutes a game. I mean, that could vary a bit, but it doesn't matter. 50% power play time, as what's been going on with Dallas, has just been that lately. Shots are down and bad. There's nothing redeeming. Joe Pavelski, folks.
Drop Joe Pavelski, folks. That's my message. That's been my message for a while. I've been on that crusade for a long time here. Mm-hmm. Whew, you guys don't know the struggle. I've been out here for a long time.
No more egg analogies. That's all I ask.
That was better than the egg analogy. I'll give myself that. Alex Tuch, left wing, right wing, 13% owned on the Vegas Golden Knights. Super low minutes. Not shooting as much as last year or even recently. IPP is high, and he's on a 53-point pace over the last 30 days. So that's not worth holding. So he's lowly owned at 13%. But, I mean, even in like the deepest of leagues at this point, I've got to assume there's better day-to-day streamers, week-to-week streamers than Alex Tuch right now. Well, Brandon had Vrana as well. So that's it. That is your episode. Be sure to go grab your hard-boiled eggs. Don't leave them on the stove to become Jonas Donskois. That's what happens when they explode. A Jonas Donskoi pops out. We will be back on Friday for the weekend preview, so pay attention to that. And we'll also be doing we'll do sit start Saturdays. And on top of that, there might be some live streams on YouTube as well to help you set lines on the heavy slates.
Is that it?
That's right. That's where Brandon comes in. Yeah.
Yep. Well, thanks for listening.
Or watching.